Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, guys, so what we have in front of us is a type of mind map, one that we've been working on, which took a significant amount of time in tandem with our book. But I believe this mind map and this video is necessary to provide many of you with clear context as to the situation we find ourselves in, as well as the rest of the world. But what is apparent in our present reality is the existence of an agenda, okay, and a very dire agenda at that, where Iblis, or Shaitan as he is known, is appears to be actively plotting and planning, not only with the shayateen in the jinn dimension, which is often the misconception, but also with his human allies. So, you know, conspiring. They are conspiring together. And we're countlessly told about these types of situations in the Quran, right? Where the enemies of truth, the enemies of the believers, the enemies of humanity actively plotting. They're having these secret meetings at night, conspiring, okay? Which brings me to the point in relation to conspiracy research. And if they are conspiring, and this is what appears to be a grand conspiracy, as I deem it to be, then the remedy for that is not only Islam, but it's also conspiracy research. And this is essentially what the video will be in relation to. Now, there are many of you who may have heard of conspiracy through social media and may have heard terms such as the Illuminati or the New World Order in this type of meme culture type of way. But the likelihood of many knowing beyond that is a rare sight. So, with this in mind, as mentioned with the book we're producing, we wanted to create something here, this video, that allows for a comprehension on these individuals and secret societies, what they believe in, their allegiance to Shaitan, and their ultimate goal. Okay. Thus, inshallah, it will serve as the first step on your journey to recognize what appears to be really going on behind the scenes and the potentially dire future consequences that we need to be aware of, which unfortunately many of us within the community are grossly unaware of. It's almost like we're in a type of hibernation, subhanAllah. And alternatively, for those of you who are entirely unaware of all conspiracies and by extension unaware of this entire topic, then I encourage you, inshallah, to sit back, okay, relax, and try to take in what I'll be sharing. It's been created in a way in which it's easy to follow and where there are explanations for each of the points I'll be raising. Okay, but just to note, there is a lot of details I am missing out because Allah knows each of these sections could be an hour video themselves. So to save us time, I've cut down a lot. But essentially, the main purpose of this video is to expose the grand conspiracy that has a number of interlinking subject matters, which you can see on your screen. Okay, but all at its core tying back to Iblis and the practice of black magic. So there appears to be a very real attempt now for those that run the world, which I call the satanic elite, the members of the secret societies who are clearly conspiring against the believers in God and humanity at large. They intend to remove our connection from the one true Lord and to remove the possibility of anyone who isn't religious from finding the one true Lord, as the evidence suggests. Okay. And I mean, to jump to the point, really, this appears to be a plan that relates to the advancement of technology we see today, which will then be merged with human beings. And this is a process called transhumanism, which I'll provide explanations for as the video goes on. Um, but they are attempting to control the populace through social engineering and the incorporation of technology into the human body. Now, this isn't far-fetched at all. Okay, we're already seeing over 10,000, I believe it's 10,000 test users for Elon Musk's Neuralink company, with many other billionaires involved in this area of investment also, as you can see on your screen, which we will come to. Um, and I mean, even beyond that, on the sidelines, there also appears to be a very concerning effort for these satanic elite to also be pursuing this technology for themselves, as well as other avenues such as through black magic ritual to achieve what they consider to be divinity astaghfirullah, meaning they envision themselves becoming godlike and immortal, all right, which is something that's called apotheosis, as the title and the thumbnail suggests. Okay, so they're attempting to become immortal and godlike, right? They want to replace the population's belief in the one true Lord, and for them and Iblis to take that place instead. All, of course, aligning with Iblis's lifelong effort of removing humanity from the straight path, okay, from belief. So this video is going to provide a clear context, tying back to some verses in the Quran and a historic view to see how all of this connects and each of the individual paths involved in Satanism that will lead to this outcome. Okay. Now, I did just want to clarify very quickly that I am not an authority on this subject. Okay, however, I have done a lot of research. In fact, it's something I'm pretty much doing every day at this point, with the hopes that scholarship and community leaders from all of us within Ahl Sunnah see this information I'll be sharing and begin to take these matters very seriously. So, in turn, they can become authorities on this topic. And so we're able to correlate even more points and best protect our spiritual connection to the prophetic tradition as well as the world at large, protect them. Because whilst we sort of go on with our daily lives, these plans are being enacted and the secret order continues to advance Iblis' satanic agenda, undoubtedly. Okay. Okay, so starting right back at the start, the title of this area of research and what I believe to be the primary aim of the satanic New World Order is called Iblis, Apotheosis, and Immortality. Apotheosis essentially meaning, as I already mentioned, man becoming God, astaghfirullah, na'uzu billah min zalik, which of course ties in directly to immortality, which is an attribute only assigned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these people that appear to run our reality and are, for lack of better words, the New World Order, they want to become like Allah. They literally believe it is a possibility to achieve self-deification. Now, don't take my word for it, and just before you think this is, all crazy stuff, we'll consult the Quran directly. Okay, we just have to consult the Quran directly that explicitly highlights where this idea of immortality and apotheosis originally came from. So these are two verses that are in relation to Adam alayhi salam and Mahoa, and in relation to Shaitan tempting them to approach the tree of Eden. So reading the first one on the left, but Shaitan whispered to him, saying, "O Adam, shall I show you the tree of immortality and a kingdom that does not fade away?" Curious, right? And the next one, subhanAllah, then Shaitan tempted them in order to expose what was hidden of their nakedness. He said, "Your Lord has forbidden this tree to you only to prevent you from becoming angels or immortals." Subhanallah. Okay, so here it becomes apparent. Two verses directly from the Quran, and it becomes apparent as to how this idea of apotheosis, man becoming God, or generally immortality, originated, and it started with Iblis himself enticing Adam alayhi salam and Mahoa to the Tree of Eden. Thus, this promise is what appears to be what Iblis whispers to his magicians and his worshippers in the present as well. Because what you have to understand is that everything Adam alayhi salam and Mahoa needed was already in the heavens with them. They already had everything they needed. The Garden of Eden was in paradise. They had unlimited things to explore. So when you have everything, the only thing left to offer someone is an eternal life. And this parallels the desires for the elites because there's a saying, right? There's a phrase, what do rich people want? And people say, oh, they want more money. Well, I believe there's a limit to how much money they want. And that limit is not being able to enjoy their money for eternity because they know, like everyone else, that they're going to die, right? Thus, the only thing left Iblis can entice you with is immortality, to continuously enjoy your riches. So, who does he offer this to? Well, it becomes apparent when hearing of the constant Illuminati rumors online, with celebrities often posing with one eye symbolism and with elites rumored to be part of this, spider's web. It all starts off with just one of these people at the start of their black magic satanic journey, simply desiring things like financial success or fame, etc. In order for them to do this, they need to sell their soul, and pursue black magic to gain the favors of Iblis and his shayateen. And sometimes these consist of horrific crimes, which we'll go into and discuss a little bit later. However, there comes a point when they're pursuing all these rituals where they have everything they wanted for themselves. They eventually hit this point, and all the money and success in the world that they could ask for, they have it. But the recognition then hits them that this, they've sold themselves to this dunya, they've sold their souls, and this is their only life. It's at this point the desire moves towards immortality so that they can continue to reap their rewards because they realize once they're dead all of this was for nothing you know so now that we've established the verses in the Quran where Iblis clearly promotes the possibility of becoming immortal like a god, now we need to recognize the reality of black magic and how this contributes towards these ideas and how this then manifests in our present reality. So taking a look at Surah Baqarah verse 102, my favorite verse in the Quran, subhanallah. um, they instead follow the magic promoted by the devils. During the reign of Solomon Sulaiman alayhi salam, never did Solomon disbelieve, rather the devils disbelieved. They taught magic to the people along with what had been revealed to the two angels Harut and Marut in Babylon. Okay, Babylon. So we identify this appears to be a point in time now, subhanAllah, where black magic or satanic practices appear to become regulated in a sense. They become standardized, they become formulated, particularly in Babylon, as the Quran verse highlights, and as Allah has mercifully told us. Okay, but prior to this, it did appear magic did exist before, and it's often referred to as ancient mysteries according to academia. And it was pretty split across many different groups and individuals. It wasn't mainstream, it wasn't standardized, it wasn't formulated and formalized. Okay, and here we can see the miraculous prophecies of the Quran, which details this, right? And we know now in the present with historic research that this proves to be the case, that magic was properly formalized here in Babylon, where we see the development of the calendar through the study of astrology, which the Babylonians introduced. Okay, they also derived fortune telling through their study of the planets and the stars, which led to divination from omens, etc. All clear signs of black magic research really sprouting in this time. So the Quran is accurate. And what I've attached next to here is a essentially an example of what Babylonian sihr was like at the time. Okay, what it was like at the time, and this was through archaeological discovery. It's called an incantation bowl, and as you can see here, there appears to be a depiction of something in the middle, which is likely a jinn with a face and a body, and so on. And what I find curious is how this looks so similar to present day sihr, right? Where not always, but sometimes it is includes some sort of sketch of the jinn they intend to use for their rituals. I've coloured over the writings on both images because none of us need to see that crap. But the curiosity is with how similar they both are. Both images of jinn and both coloured, covered in writings surrounding it. Okay, and it shows a clear sign that the magic we see today is directly derived from Babylon, as they use the same methods. And this is only a further proof of Islam and the Quran highlighting this point, subhanAllah. So, and as we discussed, this ties back into immortality, because once there is contact with the shayateen, which is the basis of all black magic ritual, then the practitioners are now in a contract. They have sold their souls, and it is here it appears to be where Iblis entices the practitioner through various rewards such as riches and then eventually immortality to encourage them to continue to worship Iblis through all of the nefarious ways, and that would be child sacrifice, etc., which was common in this Babylonian society, subhanallah, and yeah, atrocious acts such as those. So, Alhamdulillah, we've managed to cover this entire branch over here, and this essentially loops back down now, and we can see, as I mentioned, the process of magic is formulated, it's standardized into what we now understand to be specific practices of occultism or satanic tradition, which lands over here, which is basically Babylonian magic. Okay, then essentially this magical tradition expanded from here, when Mesopotamian and Babylonian civilization grew, they expanded outwards. So with migration, the people from Babylon, which included some people of the book in Islam, took with them this magical tradition where it birthed more specific areas of magical study. And that is the two school of thoughts, which are Hermeticism, where essentially the Babylonians expanded into Egypt, as well as Neoplatonism, where the Babylonians expanded into Greece, with these two essentially schools of thought being core factors that we need to cover, as it provides us with everything we need to know going forward. Everything. Subhanallah. Curiously, so if we're covering Hermeticism first, the founder of Hermeticism, who is Hermes Trismegistus, was said to be was essentially the first person from Babylon who brought this new magical tradition to Egypt. Okay, now there are some Islamic scholars of the past that considered Hermes to actually be Prophet Idris or Enoch alayhi salam, and that this magical tradition was falsely ascribed to Hermes, and for that, Allahu alam, I generally stay on the side of not making these assumptions as we aren't explicitly told in scripture about it, and obviously the magical tradition is very negatively connected to this man. But yeah, not to go into too much detail, all you have to understand about these two schools of thoughts is it appears to be very much tied to a majority of secret societies we see today, such as the Freemasons, the Illuminati, etc., that they all in some way derive their traditions and their rituals based on either of these two schools of thought, Hermeticism and Neoplatonism. Okay. And this is where things begin to get very interesting, and when we get into the real meat of the topic, subhanAllah. So starting off with Hermeticism, like I said, one of its core principles is the phrase "as above, so below." Okay, as above, so below. Now it gets a bit technical, but stay with me. So this phrase essentially, it's essentially a philosophical phrase undoubtedly introduced by Iblis and can be interpreted in multiple ways, but it is mostly associated with a universal balance. Okay, so to provide an example, as they are magicians, they are aware of a spiritual and a physical realm. Okay, they are aware of both of them, and so because there is a physical world which we live in, and they now know there's a spiritual world after conducting their practices in black magic, this is a universal balance with a spiritual and a physical realm. Okay, there's an equal opposite force, as above, so below. Okay, it's a play on the interchanging words. Opposites attract. One can't exist without the other. So naturally, by deduction, they attribute the same to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Astaghfirullah. Na'uzu billah min zalik. Na'uzu billah. Okay, because as above, as there is an immortal God in the sky above, so below, there must be an equal opposite force below. So there must be a way for us below to become divine. Astaghfirullah. So that provides them with the clarity that becoming a God is achievable. Okay, are you with me so far? Because there is a God in the sky. In order for that to be balanced, there must be gods who are yet to develop below. Okay, this then becomes a life mission for them in achieving divinity, apotheosis, man becoming God. Okay, so it's an ethos that they follow, an objective. Okay, so make no mistake about it, these people believe in the Almighty God. Okay, but rather than worshipping the Almighty, they choose to instead attempt to overthrow him by becoming gods themselves. So they actually believe Allah is the oppressor God who has come with all of these rules, okay, all these rules and regulations on morality, on what to do and what not to do. And it is these rules that the Almighty uses to stop you from becoming gods. This is what they say, because He wants to control you. Na'uzu billah. So if there is an oppressor on one side, okay, according to as above, so below, there must be a liberator. Okay, there must be a liberator, and they identify this liberator as Iblis, right? The perfect opposite to God. Astaghfirullah. It all begins to connect together right back at the start, okay? Because of what happens upon an individual performing black magic. The shayateen and Iblis has the practitioner do the most vile of the vilest things, whether that is involving murder all the way up until horrendous crimes against a child and so on. So why does Iblis get them to do this? Well, he advises them that the laws and the rules of morality, okay, that come from Allah are there to stop you from achieving your potential of becoming immortal and a god yourself. So, in order to liberate yourself, you must violate these laws and be immoral, which is why we now see all these horrendous acts that make up a satanic ritual, sacrifices and things that are meant to be, things that are meant to be intimate, that are done together, these disgusting acts, because the ultimate idea is that in order to become God, you must know evil, which is the opposite of good and God's laws. So this interplay of good and evil and violating God's divine laws and trying to achieve this balance can be seen on the statue of Iblis himself. Okay, so if we go back over here on the statue of Iblis himself, zoom out a little bit there. As we can see, I've coloured over the breasts that this statue has. It has a male body, okay, but it has female breasts. So it is a representation of as above, so below, clearly an equal opposite force, man and woman, male and female. That, it doesn't only violate God's creation by mixing male and female, but it serves as a core symbol representing divinity. Okay, and we can also see he has a humanoid body, a human body, but a head of a goat. Okay, so mixing animal and human together, that goes along with the theme. And in addition to this, we can see um, something interesting emerging from the abdomen, the private parts, which is the staff of Hermes. Okay, this is literally called the staff of Hermes, which shows two intertwining snakes, as we can see here, right? And traveling up the pole, they're traveling up on either side, which represents again the universal balance with the snakes parallel to each other. And of course, it's not an accident. It looks so similar to that of the UK Medical Services logo as well, just out of curiosity. Moving on, with the violation of God's divine laws being the main aim, this is why we also see in those black magic videos where we see Qurans being pulled out from the sewers, Qurans that have been totally decimated, astaghfirullah, yeah, and why you see people like Marilyn Manson over here ripping up the Bible in his music videos because they believe God's laws are preventing them from getting the riches of this world and also preventing them from becoming gods themselves. So to desecrate the words of God is seen as advancing oneself further. So when we see Bible or Quran burners in public, we really need to stop and think, are they really doing this just to aggravate people, or are they doing this to further themselves on their path with Iblis? But that's a side point. Now, as already mentioned, this is nothing more than deception from Shaitan Iblis. Okay, they cannot go on to achieve apotheosis or immortality. Okay, but they are actively trying, and when they're trying, that means very dire things for humanity at large. Okay, subhanallah. Okay, with the plans they have to harm humanity as much as possible, because the bigger the sacrifice and harm against society, the larger their reward from Iblis. And the more they believe they are advancing oneself upon the path to this false promise of apotheosis, the more harm that they can cause, which we'll get into more shortly. But this is what they believe. Okay, this is what they believe. This is in their doctrines. This is in their schools of thoughts. Okay, wallahi, I'm not making this stuff up. Subhanallah. So you as listeners, I want you to draw a line in between these sections, and you're going to have your own journeys of learning. So take what is relevant to you and really research this stuff. So Alhamdulillah, we've managed to cover the meaning, the deeper meaning behind as above, so below, and how it ties back to this idea of immortality. If you haven't been able to grasp anything that we've covered so far, please go back and listen to it as it's crucial for everything going forward. Now, what I did want to talk about next are the Freemasons and how they very much fit into this idea of as above, so below too. Um, and I know many of you hear of the Freemasons but not actually know much about them. Well, we'll be covering a lot of details, so inshallah that serves as solid information for you. Anyway, how they are represented by As Above, So Below, it is represented here by none other than George Washington himself, okay, the founding father of the United States, who was actually a Freemason. And this statue of him in Washington, D.C., where he is pointing above and down. Okay, it's no accident. It directly relates to that of Baphomet or Iblis doing the exact same pose as above, so below. Okay, so we can see there is a clear alignment on what the Freemasons follow here. Okay, they're a direct, almost descendant of the as above, so below ideology. Thus, within Masonic halls, which are basically their lodges for the Freemasons and their activities, the floors are tiled black and white to form a checkered design, which represents, from their own belief, and I quote, a symbolic representation of life's duality, particularly the interplay of good and evil, end quote. So, it's no accident they describe it as a balance between good and evil. Okay, it's tying back to as above, so below. Um, so, what is the good in Masonry? Well, the core part of Masonry you would have likely heard is that they like to portray to the public their positive community contributions of involvement in charity and so on. So, if their involvement in charity is represented by the white tiles, then what the hell is their involvement in the evil or the black tiles that they so proudly lay out on their floors, right? So, this is where we stumble upon the constant rumored ties the Freemasons have with Satanism. um, in addition, the tiles do not lie. Everything they are represented by is tied to symbolism. They are obsessed with symbolism. Nothing lacks purpose with Freemasons. Each design has a purpose. So, by natural deduction, the black tiles must mean something and must be something that they actively strive towards. If they were just a fraternity that contributed positively to the community, why would they need to operate as a secret society? We should be asking these questions. Thus, we can only imagine the horror they indulge in to meet their evil requirements to ensure perfect balance is achieved within them. Allahu Alam, you know. However, the Freemasons slightly differ to other traditions with how perfect balance with good and evil, achieving divinity is achieved. Interestingly, achieving it is seen by Freemasons as activating the pineal gland, okay, better known as the third eye. So the pineal gland is a real thing within our brains, um, and it's the third eye and the pineal gland are connected together. It's a well-known concept throughout spiritual belief systems. It's in Buddhism and a few other traditions, especially New Age spiritualism. Now, intriguingly, there are 33 vertebrae on a human spine. Okay, you can count all of them, they're all there. And it's well known that this pineal gland, okay, is sits at the top, it's at the apex of the 33rd vertebrae, okay, right at the top where the brain is, because the spine connects to the nervous system and then obviously the brain. Thus, once balancing good and evil, you achieve control of the entire nervous system down the spine and subsequently activate the third eye, achieving godhood. Okay, so it is no accident that there are also 33 degrees or ranks in Freemasonry, right? It all just ties in together, clearly outlining that a Mason's contribution of both good and evil eventually brings them up the ranks and the ladder, not only in Masonry, but also to become divine right at the top. Okay, through unlocking the nervous system that leads to the pineal gland. So this now explains why lower ranking Masons, unfortunately including Muslims who foolishly join their ranks, are the ones performing the good acts, such as charity, which is what the Freemasons want you to publicly perceive. Okay, these good acts of the low ranking Masons are seemingly performed on behalf of those up the ranking ladder. Okay, so that the higher ranking Masons can conduct the bad, the evil in their own enclosed circles. Okay, the pineal gland or the third eye is something you've often seen is being promoted in these new age religious beliefs that are centered around meditation, yoga, and that kind of thing. But it also is something you've seen through symbolism, but you likely never really knew what it meant, and that is represented by celebrities and so on that use the one eye symbolism, showing you clearly where their allegiance lies and what path they are on. Okay, so it also links to Dajjal in ways, of course, because he is said to have one eye, but the eye that he does have is supposedly empowered by the pineal gland, which is something maybe they'll claim when he does arrive. Hence why he's able to deceive the masses and perform what appears to be miracles, because he's achieved mastery over the pineal gland and has opened his third eye, which is what I believe they may claim. Okay, so I hope all of that makes sense. Feel free to draw a line here and to really take in the information I just presented. Um, but moving on to the next point, this is information I gathered from a Maulana Abdul Latif, who suggests there is a significant intrigue between opening the third eye and the supposed apple of Eden, as we already covered earlier in the Quranic quote. Now, Islamically, we aren't specifically told if there was a fruit on the tree or not. Simply that Adam alayhi salam and Ma Hawa were advised not to approach the tree. Whether they took part in eating an apple or not, Allahu Alam. Okay, but the claim for those that follow the Freemasonry path is that it was an apple that was eaten. And because they claim that God doesn't want competition and doesn't want his creation to become gods themselves, na'uzubillah, because they claim that when Adam and Eve ate from the tree, that's why they were cast out of the Garden of Eden, because they claim God got angry at them because they were going to become gods and then God would have competition. So astaghfirullah. So this is their version of events, with of course the snake tempting them to do it, who was Iblis, who they um, who they essentially say tried to liberate Adam and Eve. So consuming or using the apple of Eden appears to be a shortcut, according to Freemasons, to achieve the third eye and apotheosis. And interestingly, using Assassin's Creed 3 as an example, so Assassin's Creed is a game. However, there are aspects within the game that does raise very interesting points relating to um, the concept of the New World Order and occultism and so on. What they claim, and actually as part of their game, that the entire purpose for George Washington himself expanding his territory, okay, and flushing out the Native Americans was to find the Apple of Eden, like it was some type of magical artifact, okay, which he eventually does find in the game and grants him some type of immense power. Of course, this is just a game, but it becomes curious, right? As we know, these people are involved in satanic traditions, and there are countless other examples of real world people like Isaac Newton who believed in these magical artifacts as well, and who actually looked for them too. So, Allahu Alam if this is what George Washington did, but that's a topic for another time, inshallah. But it's a curious point. But for the rest of the Freemasons, they ultimately recognize, and other Satanists who follow this line of belief in the third eye, they pretty much acknowledge the apple of Eden is irretrievable, which is why they pursue the path of balancing good and evil instead. However, they do claim there is a relative to the apple of Eden, and that is this mushroom here, which is the Amanita muscaria, which is the classic type of Mario, the Mario game mushroom that is red with white spots. What they believe is that it is related to the apple of Eden because apples are red and the interior is white, right? With the Amanita muscaria sharing a similar color scheme. So they believe it's a relative to this fruit. This now ties into the effects of psychedelic drugs, with this mushroom having psychedelic effects. Very interestingly, and this is more of a curiosity point, subhanAllah, psychedelics like this mushroom and DMT in a recent study at Imperial College in London has shown that from the multiple individuals that volunteered to use these substances, each detailed contact with strange entities, which I think is very curious and may show potential signs of these drugs putting you into a state of consciousness that makes you privy to seeing past the veil and communicating with jinn. Allahu Alam, we of course never truly know, but I think that's what led to the inspiration for these Satanists in this tradition to hold the apple of Eden and the Amanita muscaria mushroom as a focus in their mission to achieve divinity. As we know, psychedelic drugs are regularly used in satanic rituals, so they potentially see it as aiding them on their path. And subhanAllah, it potentially brings a whole other reason as to why these drugs are haram, subhanAllah. Okay, so that pretty much covers everything in relation to Freemasonry. So, moving away from Freemasonry and an extension of this as above, so below ideology, but retaining this idea, of the whole idea, we'll take a look at celebrities and their methodology, which is often centered around the satanic tradition known as the left hand path. And we know as Muslims that the left hand is, of course, less favorable when used. We shouldn't be using it. Thus, when we're encouraged to use the right hand, this is exactly what the satanic tradition wants to go against. They want to go against the right hand. So they call it the left hand path because they seek to do things opposite to godly morals. Not to go into too many details, but ultimately, this line of belief is similar to what the Freemasons believe in, and that is to violate God's laws as much as possible to achieve fame and fortune. And the higher up the ranks you are in the left hand path, the goal then shifts to pursuing apotheosis, okay, and immortality. Now, the best example for the left hand path would be Jimmy Savile, you might be surprised to see. Of course, Savile, notorious abuser of individuals, especially bringing harm to young people. And this is something that is barely mentioned on the mainstream media, but he was undoubtedly a Satanist, undoubtedly as part of the left hand path. There have been a number of reports and allegations from those that he abused that stated they were taken to satanic rituals, and he was there, and he would conduct these actions as part of a ritual. There would be masks and cloaks and people chanting Satan's name, and it goes on and on and on. Right, there's multiple reports of it. There was also reports that he was a necrophiliac, which means an individual who engaged in disgusting acts with dead bodies, as he had access to the morgue through his connections in Leeds General Hospital. But what really solidifies the evidence against him being a Satanist would be his interview by Professor Anthony Clare, a psychologist who interviewed Savile in 1991. Prior to all of Savile's crimes being revealed, it was Anthony Clare who was probably the first person to notice something wrong with Savile, as he basically said that there's something chilling about this man after the interview. And this is in his book and in the episode. So anyway, a key moment in the interview occurred when Clare asked Savile what he desired from life. Eerily, Savile responded, to which he stated he wanted ultimate freedom. Okay, ultimate freedom. Not just any kind of freedom, ultimate freedom. Well, what the hell does that mean, right? Certainly, as a celebrity, with all the money and power he had, he would have a strong element of freedom already, you'd assume. But that's when it takes us into the central concept of the left hand path, you see, and as above, so below. Because it's not just any ordinary freedom he's referring to, it's ultimate freedom, the desire to have no constraints, okay, to achieve a level of ascendancy, which is apotheosis, okay, man becoming God. So now, when we consider the crimes known about Savile, it becomes immediately clear, at least to me, that his abuse towards countless young people now appears to have served in his advancement on his journey to apotheosis. Potentially one of the many reasons he was committing these crimes. Okay, so it is very chilling, very concerning. So, closely relating to the phrase, anyway, of the ultimate freedom is the phrase, do what thou wilt. Okay, this phrase was created by Aleister Crowley. And all you need to know about Aleister Crowley and this man was that he essentially heavily popularized occultism and Satanism in Hollywood and that kind of thing. He inspired John Lennon, who was a member of the Beatles, uh, believe it or not. So Aleister Crowley was essentially a black magic priest, for lack of better words, which many celebrities, as well as the MI5, believe it or not, consulted to seek his guidance and magic from, or whatever. And to sum him up, really, he considered non-elites. This is his own words. He considered non-elites, so people like you and me, as less fit, and that we should be dominated and stamped down on. These are his words. Um, and another thing to sum him up, in addition, there was a newspaper at the time he was alive that described him as the most disgusting man alive for the ways in which he would participate in black magic ritual, often involving, sorry to say, but private part blood, and so on. All signs of very strong sihr. Okay, very strong magic. So the concept of ultimate freedom is basically a replica of do what thou wilt, okay, which Crowley created, and basically means, it ties back into the idea of opposing God's morals, to do whatever the hell you desire and whatever you want, being ultimately free, okay, and this lends itself to eventually achieving apotheosis as well. Interestingly, you may have heard celebrities like Will Smith speaking about this term, and how they use it as their ethos in life, etc. So creepy stuff. Anyway, the individual that links to Aleister Crowley is Helena Blavatsky. Okay, H.P. Blavatsky. She is essentially considered to be the godmother of modern occultism and Satanism. She had a real big impact as well, and it was both of these two, Blavatsky and Crowley, that really shaped modern Satanism. It's with her now that we can understand why all of these Satanists who follow as above, so below believe it's a very real possibility to achieve divinity and become God. Okay, so trying to keep it as basic as possible, she was actively in touch with her teachers who were long dead. Okay, their time had come and gone. They came back to her as spirits, according to her, which she referred to as her ascended masters. Okay, ascended masters. So this basically meant that her teachers during their lives, they achieved perfect balance in a particular manner and ascended into gods. They achieved apotheosis, hence why they were still able to speak to her in spiritual form, supposedly. So all followers of as above, so below use this concept as proof that they are able to ascend like these ascended masters as one method to become a god. Or, the Freemason path to unlock the pineal gland, the third eye, and become a god. Or in the left hand path sense to achieve ultimate freedom and become god this way. So they each have gods, they each have paths, astaghfirullah, to achieve some form of ascendancy, but they use this as their motivation that it's a possibility because it came from her words apparently. However, from the Islamic perspective and from my opinion, okay, my opinion, it appears that this is nothing more than a deception from Iblis. Okay, he is likely utilizing Gareens, okay, Gareens of these dead teachers to give Helena Blavatsky the impression that she is speaking to her masters that have become gods and spiritual, when it's actually just their Gareens who are acting like them and sharing knowledge from Iblis to be passed on. Okay, understood? For those of you that don't know, Gareens are essentially each individual shayateen, jinn, that is allocated to each of us to tempt us to be misguided in our daily lives. So the reason I believe it's the ascended masters, Gareens, that are the ones acting like them, is because Gareens are the ones that likely knew the individual the most, hence can best act like them. So they could deceive people like Blavatsky, basically. Now, lastly, before we move on to the next section, another crucial part of this occult agenda, okay, is eugenics, which Crowley and Helena Blavatsky draw a direct line for us to follow. Okay, so by definition, eugenics is the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable, which basically means selective breeding to create a perfect race. Okay, so it's completely riddled with discrimination and racism, but it serves this idea of creating the perfected human being that is almost godlike. Okay, so it undoubtedly eugenics was inspired through occult means. It was inspired from Iblis, Satanism, and the occult. Okay, and there's a direct connection to this whole concept of man becoming God and apotheosis and so on. So as you can see, um, they likely took inspiration from the Vitruvian Man by Da Vinci. Of course, you can see how this fits in with Crowley believing any individual that is not a status of an elite should be stamped out and basically eliminated. And Blavatsky also contributed to this by suggesting that the Aryan race, so the original Caucasian people, are the more spiritually evolved race, whatever the hell that means. So it's of no surprise this led to genocide, with both Crowley and Blavatsky's work being used as core motivation for Nazi occultism in World War II, which, we unfortunately saw the devastating effects and outcome of eugenics and the harm it causes. But we'll touch upon more of this in the next section, inshallah. Now, there is one last web that we need to cover, if I can find it, and that is the final connection from As Above So Below, and that links to transhumanism. So we'll discuss this a little bit later, but it ties into transhumanism, okay, technology, which appears to be the current preferred choice now across those satanic elite who rule this capitalist materialist system, and likely the most dangerous effort to achieve divinity, apotheosis, with the most impact on us and society's daily lives. So we're going to get to this very shortly once we cover the next section, inshallah. So, Alhamdulillah, we've covered a significant amount of Hermeticism, and this basically wraps up the whole Hermeticism wing of As Above, So Below. The left-hand path, ultimate freedom, Freemasons, the pineal gland, and aspect of transhumanism with an aspect of eugenics as well, subhanAllah. So, I hope you've learned a lot. Inshallah, if you've made notes, then you should be well aware of how to spot these lines of belief and things like this in the future, inshallah. But I did want to rewind quite significantly now because there was a whole branch that we haven't covered yet. And this then does tie into the whole concept of transhumanism and does get us to the end as well. And that is another motivation for these people to fall into magic and the belief in immortality and so on. So we have the magic on this side, but what about people that didn't start off in magic? Well, that is the motivation of the fear of death. Okay, the fear of death. So without Islam, I think it's safe for us all to say that we'd go crazy and likely be locked up in an institution somewhere. It is because of Islam we know our purpose. Okay, we know that this world is temporary. It's not the real world, so that when death does approach, of course, it's sad in this reality, but it's the step to take us on our actual journey. Subhanallah. So we have that comfort, subhanallah. But remember, those who are secular do not have that comfortability. Okay, so they are left in a very troubled state. As a result of this, they are so obsessed with this world that anything pertaining to religion is not going to cut it for them because they don't want this world to end. Okay, they are very comfortable here with their selfish desires. And this is where we actually come across Nietzsche, okay, who was a perfect example of this and who is actually a really big part in this entire topic as he links to so many areas. So Nietzsche was essentially a philosopher and completely anti-God, anti-religion. He was famously known for his quote, "God is dead and we have killed him." Astaghfirullah. Na'uz billah. Essentially meaning that there is no need to follow religion or a God and that humans are wasting their potential relying on God. In addition to that, he hated the fact that his society at the time were religious, and he hated that they put the material life as secondary, for which he clearly wanted it as the primary focus, as he explicitly mentions and details in his work. So he's showing clear signs of someone who could succumb to the whispers of Iblis, right, because of his love for materialism. So he pretty much encapsulates what it means to have no comfortability and that death is something negative. Okay. In addition, he was very well known for promoting nihilism, this ideology which you may have heard of, which essentially means there is no meaning to life. Okay, there's literally zilch to life, and that religious morals do not exist. So he's pushing forward this idea that you have free will and can basically do whatever it is you want. Okay, so let's see where this connects to. Doesn't take a genius. Okay, so sounds like something very familiar. All right, ultimate freedom, do what thou will. So it's not looking good for him and we can get a hint for where his for where Nietzsche's true allegiance lies in the end. Okay, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. What became apparent with Nietzsche was that he had a zero comfortability now because of his hatred towards religion. He doesn't believe in the Almighty, he doesn't believe in life after death, so he's left stuck and became petrified and completely terrified of death. And this is well documented, actually. This is something that was well known about him. He was terrified of death because what actually ended up happening was that he was discovered to have syphilis for most of his life. Okay, this led to a complete mental collapse. He lost his mind later on in life, and syphilis eventually led to his death. Now, what becomes apparent is these individuals, okay, philosophers such as him, not only do they hate God and hate religion, but they also share hatred of the limitations of the human body, with humans being susceptible to diseases and pain and suffering. And in order to understand Nietzsche and other philosophers like him at the time, all we need to do is look at syphilis's effect on the human body. Okay, to encapsulate this hatred of this body, we have to look at its effect. Now, I have two images here of the damage, and they're only illustrations, but they're shocking. Okay, it's very shocking, subhanallah. And this is the damage that tertiary syphilis has on the human body. Okay, I couldn't show any more images or real images as they're very graphic, and I don't want this video to go down. But the effect of tertiary syphilis was brutal. It's as if the human body is melting away, like the body is eating itself away. Okay, and that's just one disease. So all of the other diseases probably left these philosophers in shock, right? Like Nietzsche, and it probably shocked them to the core. And now in the present, curiously, it's only now in the present there appears to be a debate with modern scientists and researchers who are now trying to claim syphilis never impacted Nietzsche's mind or his work, etc. But these people clearly just idolize him and are simply lost in their desires of the material world as well. It's evident his driving factor for most, if not all, of his work is his obsession with the material, his fear of death and diseases, and his hatred of the human body for its limitations as a result of syphilis that absolutely destroyed him. You know, so instead of finding the answers with God and religion, which would surely bring them tranquility in putting their faith in the one true Lord, these people decide to take their own route, okay, which results in the obsession with hygiene, to have full control over what they feel they are powerless against. Okay, and this is where they took steps for future generations and to alter the trajectory of what it means to be human. Okay, it's here we see Nietzsche develop the concept of Übermensch, okay, which is central to this entire idea of not relying on God or the human body, and where we find the heaviest link to apotheosis and immortality with Nietzsche. This is the heaviest link. All right. Now it seems comical and that kind of thing, but this is something that they really did believe in. All right, it's a real thing. So he describes Übermensch in his work as essentially the ultimate human being, the ultimate man, a superman, a man that has transformed from something natural to something supernatural, right? A man that has transcended into something all powerful. And we can see the connections here to the Hermeticism line of thinking. He described this Superman concept as supposedly being for the next evolution of mankind and the perfect race of human being that would be able to avoid diseases, death, and to have control over anything that could negatively impact them, essentially becoming a god. All right. And this tied in, no surprise, quite significantly to the Nazis' aims in World War II when seeking to create the Aryan race through eugenics, as we covered. This obsession with hygiene, a clean race, as to what they deem to be pure, and to exert this level of control over human DNA to create the perfect race. Yeah, they use Nietzsche's concept of Übermensch, as well as beliefs from Helena Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley, of course, as the catalyst and the critical motivator in their methods to achieve this, etc. And of course, this concept of the perfect race, it then ties into racism and brings a whole other meaning in there as well, and especially to Iblis, who provided the first example to us of human beings of racism against Adam alayhi salam. and him believing he was the perfect race of being as a jinn and being superior as a jinn. So once you pull the thread, you can see how all of this ties together so much. It really doesn't take long to identify that all of these ideas are, purely satanic and come from Iblis himself. Astaghfirullah, na'uz billah, na'uz billah. So the tie-in is evident. Okay, the fear of death clearly served as a huge inspiration for those outside of satanic circles to begin their journeys in satanic tradition. Okay, it all ties back to here, and this is the catalyst, is the motivator, right? And it's undoubtedly Iblis who planted the seeds in people like Nietzsche's mind of envisioning a future of man becoming God and immortal. So we now see the culmination of a number of ideas, right, tying into this mind map. Um, that they recognize the limitations of the human body, right, whichever wing they sit on, and they're afraid of it, right? So it becomes very much a mission, likely a mission they often discuss in their secret meetings. Not only are we going to develop the body for eugenics, but we're going to make an artificial body that can't be subjected to all of these things, because look what syphilis does, etc. And I can imagine these people talking about this, and the idea then strictly moves onto how to alter the weakness of the human body and how to transform it into something powerful that can resist diseases and can resist harm. Okay, so this is when it moves into finally the direction of transhumanism, but by extension, Neoplatonic alchemy, okay, which is the core teaching of Neoplatonism, right? Now, by definition, alchemy, okay, this is all you need to know. Alchemy is, and I quote, a seemingly magical process of transformation, creation, or combination, end quote. So finding a magical method of transformation, right? Transforming the body into something artificial and so on, which is a core tenet of alchemy, okay? Which is the process of changing states within a compound. And to basically understand it more easily, they believe in the possibility of altering atoms within a structure and changing it into something else entirely. So take a wooden table, right? This can be transformed into a metal table, all right? And this is where we get into transhumanism because it links directly. And this is where we find the tie in transhumanism for the last line links directly to Übermensch. Okay, transhumanism ties into from alchemy and as above, so below. And this is the sort of final um, section that we're going to be covering essentially. Okay, Alhamdulillah. So we've come to the final point and arguably the most important point because this actually relates to our present reality, our present time. Um, the final point which interlinks everything that we've covered so far all the way together, and it really seems like everything we've been discussing is leading up until this topic right here, transhumanism, as we've already discussed. So Alhamdulillah, hopefully you've learned a lot from the previous areas, and inshallah you learn a lot from this one. But we are nearly at the finish line now. Um, but please do make notes as this is likely the most important section. So, continuing on from alchemy and as of what I previously said, this is what transhumanism is. It's merging man with machine to achieve the goals of this artificial body that they wanted, that Nietzsche wanted, that all these philosophers wanted, and for the elites to become godlike. And we already have scientists such as Ray Kurzweil, who believes humanity's next step, okay, in human evolution is technology and merging ourselves with it. This is something he said. Okay, so they believe we came from apes, and apes into humans, and now they believe humans into robots. They fully believe that. Okay. In addition, he said humans could be immortal, blah blah blah, by 2030 with help of nanobots that will make us immune to all diseases. So these people are living in fantasy land. They're well on board with it, and they're ready to go for it at any given moment. Okay. And when you stop and really think about, people have trouble in understanding transhumanism and how it sort of look in real life. People going to be walking around like robots or whatever. But the easiest way to explain it is when you think about it already, we're already nearly there. Okay, this is not far-fetched at all. All the mobile phones we carry do everything for us. Yeah, we can communicate with people on the other side of the world. We can find out any information we want with a simple Google search from any book in the world. We can see events that are unfolding and happening in a country we may have never even visited before. We use our own fingerprints, okay, and face scanning to unlock the devices. And 10 years ago, if you told someone this, they wouldn't believe you. So now we have to read it because we've got it in the present now. We have to think what's going to happen 10 years in the future. Do you understand? This is how it works with technology. It moves fast. Once the ball gets rolling, it's unstoppable and it keeps on going as we head closer and closer to transhumanism. So in this present reality, we are basically cyborgs. Okay, it's just that the technology is in our pocket and not merged with us yet, but they are actively pushing for that. We will get to a point where normal, average, everyday people will begin merging with the machines. Zero doubt about it. Because look, consider, Instagram Reels, TikTok, and all these things that they are damaging people's brains. And studies show it reduces your dopamine drive, your concentration, your attention span. This technology becomes part of people's daily lives. I've seen the number of hours people spend just swiping up all the time. There is a reliance on the technology. Studies show it reduces your capacity to critically think, okay, and reduces your patience when reading. See, they're turning you into zombies already, so that when the revelation comes about that, okay, here's all this tech and let's fuse it inside of your body, people will be dumb enough to say, yeah, and that's genuine. That is factual. These people are dumbing down, their brains are going into a blender, and this is all part of the tactic. Zero doubt about it. Guarantee a study in 10 to 20 years will come out to prove that these reels and these quick dopamine hits have destroyed the human brain, right? Oh, but don't worry, because in 20 years' time, everyone will have a metallic robotic brain as part of transhumanism. Yeah, I can see this all happening. I can see it all happening. So, consider AI. I mean, AI ridiculous. I mean, the things that people can do now, entire reports that they've put no effort into. It will come to a point where AI can do literally everything for you, because it's already doing people's jobs for them and that kind of thing. So, it really doesn't surprise me. Um, so, all this level of convenience that we have right now, the time will come when even more convenience is offered, okay, with transhumanism, and there'll be an advantage to merging the technology with our bodies. And I think we'd be all surprised as to how many people willingly come on board for it. Yeah, and no surprise from those in the Ummah who decide to just go for it as well. Yeah, we're heading into this brave new world. It's a system run by Iblis, okay, it's a brave new world, as Aldous Huxley's book discusses, a world where we are now being targeted, the mass general population, as not being befitting for their ideals of race, such as in eugenics. We aren't the perfection that they want on this earth. This means a push to transhumanism worldwide, as this obsession they have for having everything under their control and being clean and pure like gods means they need to have us under control too, because they want to feel like they're the gods. And to understand why they want us to be installed with the machines is very simple. We already acknowledge they want full control as they believe they are gods who should be in control. Therefore, to make us programmable to do what they say, they no longer have to do this whole long route of social engineering, right? And psychological conviction. Instead, once machinery is embedded within you, all they need to do is flick a switch and they're in complete control. It's as simple as that. Okay. So this idea of merging us with machines, it's already happening with Neuralink. As I mentioned before, Elon Musk Neuralink says 10,000 patients have signed up for its brain chip. Interestingly enough, Mr. EP himself was heavily involved in it. No surprise, probably like Savile on the left-hand path, um, with similar crimes. Jeff Bezos doesn't surprise me. Can science cheat death? These questions, which is like almost blasphemous, they're being asked and they're being actively pursued. Bill Gates, classic. Within 10 years, AI will replace many doctors and teachers, blah, blah, blah. Ray Kurzweil again, a co-owner of Google Ventures, opening a lab. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Okay, so from their perspective, you either get on board with what they are pushing upon the populace or you are left behind with nothing. And I believe they will make it whereby you can only operate in society if it is with their technology within your body. When it comes to, for example, paying for things. Right now, some places don't even accept cash anymore. right? Well, what happens when they introduce payment through Neuralink in your brain? There's only so much longer they will accept payments with your phone or your credit card after that, right? So they want to push it to the point where we have to rely on this technology to even operate within society, or you'll be left behind. Okay, look what is already happening with digital IDs. You supposedly can't even join a new company, at a new company without one, subhanallah. So, furthermore, CBDCs, which are digital versions of our fiat currency, fiat sterling pound, separating us even further from any legitimate monetary value, which is far past being backed by gold. No point even thinking about that. So the future is indeed looking very bleak, and I urge the community to really begin looking into these matters before it's too late. Um, before it's too late. So here's Time magazine, who for the past couple of decades have been pretty much promoting transhumanism like no tomorrow. Probably the biggest promoter of transhumanism in the last 20 to 30 years. These are some of the covers that they've had. So mocking Adam and Eve, solving the mysteries of DNA, talking about DNA again, similar concept. We see interesting concept here: man into Superman, Ubermensch. The future of medicine. Here we see Hermes' staff with the snake coiling down. Um, the future of medicine, how genetic engineering will change us in the next century. These people going on and on and on about it, and it just keeps going on with babies, genetics, the baby gene machine, CRISPR experiments, why your DNA isn't your destiny, which is fascinating. So they're already planting these seeds of transhumanism and so on. The future of babies, never online, cyborg arm right there for you to have a look at. The God gene, stuck for a lot, exactly where the pineal gland and the third eye should be. So we know what these people are putting forward. We know what side of the coin they're on, and who they're backing. And God versus science. And then of course we've got the big one over here, which is 2045, the year man becomes immortal. So Time magazine, can't trust any of these rags, and they make their agenda very, very clear. So anyway, upon the populace adopting transhumanism and incorporating the machinery within their brains or their entire body, you would be a fool to not be aware of the fact that these corporations who develop the technology now literally own your physical body. They want to become your lord, as we said. So these corporations, this tech within you, they own your body. They have a desire for control. So this tech is in control of you. They can turn it off and on whenever they please, and you can really tell. Um, that people will still fall for this anyway, which is just like, which explains, right, why so many people will follow the Dajjal, subhanallah. Anyway, looking at some of the AI company names and what they refer to, you can really tell what they stand for, as James Tunney highlighted, a cult researcher. So we have the company Nvidia, who are the world leaders apparently in AI technology. Their name literally translates to envy. So envy, jealousy, and you have to remember that it's not because they're having a joke or they just like the sound of the name. Everything these people do has a meaning. Okay, everything that these people do serves a deeper purpose. So it's no accident they name themselves after a grave sin in Islam, Christianity, and so on. Okay, and then another AI company. And this company is called Genetrix, I believe, which, when translated, Genetrix um, means mother. Okay, is a Latin derived English word meaning the biological mother, female parent, or ancestress of a child. And then we get over here, De Genetrix, mother of God, which was used for the name the Virgin Mary. I'm assuming in the Latin translations of the Bible, which, it ties back to Maryam, may Allah bless her. So, the Mother Mary, the mother of God, obviously, according to Christians. From the Christian perspective, I mean, the word matrix as well. So, you often hear this term matrix simulation. This literally, the root word for it is mother or womb again, tying to genetrix. So it builds an image of metaphors in our head for which they believe the mother will be the AI technology. okay? And the God will become the user. Do you understand how Christian concept is with Mary? Obviously, in the Mary, and then she births the God according to the Christian Trinity paradigm, right? So they're saying the same thing, that the AI is the mother, the matrix, the genetrix, and it will birth the gods, and the gods are the people who are in control, and the satanic elite. So, all of this stuff has a meaning. So again, absolutely not an accident. Thus, as much as they might like you to think that they're involved in the future, um, and that they've cut ties with religion and they're thinking about the future, and they're Nietzschean, and they're Ubermensch and all, they are very much tied to the past still. It serves as their inspiration, and it always remains in their mind as they fulfill Iblis's agenda. Zero doubt about it. So they try to convince you they're all about the future. They're just as connected to the past as anyone else, right? Um, and then lastly, just to add onto the obsession that they have with the play on words and so on. The words artificial intelligence, okay, often shortened to AI. So when you're pronouncing AI, right, and you look at its acrostic meaning, it spells out AI. Subhanallah. We can see, of course, it has to be connected to the Dajjal in some way, right? One eye, or the third eye, pineal gland. And you may be thinking, okay, he's overthinking this, but trust me when I tell you, they do not overthink a single grain. Each of this, we have to understand, each of these things that they do, whether it's with the names of the companies or words and phrases that are being thrown out there, it's all their worship, their ibadah to Iblis. Okay, they do it on purpose. They get the thrill out of it. They enjoy um, putting the obvious in front of your eyes, but deceive you. Okay, exactly how the celebrities do it with the one eye symbolism. They love toying with us. They love toying with society. So using these names and using these terms is absolutely part of their agenda. Okay. But anyway, as we come to the end of the video now, remember. Okay. No matter how hard, subhanAllah, look how much we covered. No matter how hard they try, they will never own your soul. Okay. They will never own your soul. That belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as does everything in this world. And remember, it's not all doom and gloom. Okay, Allah has a plan, as the Quran states, and we can see that perfectly with this big blue arrow here, and we can see right there that it says, وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. Okay, and they plan, but Allah plans, and Allah is the best of planners. Okay, so have hope, but what we need to ensure of is that the people are aware of this agenda so that they aren't tricked into this and risk their lives, and more importantly, risk their deen. Okay, things may get hard, but with scholarship, paying attention to these matters, which I hope happens, inshallah, we'll be able to be prepared and protect society at large from this agenda. Um, but unfortunately, the Ummah is sleeping. Distractions are huge, and society keeps you so busy that it doesn't give many people the chance to reflect. And this is kind of unfortunately what we're dealing with right now. So as we conclude this lengthy topic, which I hope inshallah you learn a lot from, I want to encourage individuals to reach out to Knights of Zaman at gmail.com or Instagram at Order of Zaman if you have any questions. Or if you want to use any of this content, then please reach out for permission first so I can ensure it is being utilized appropriately in front of the appropriate audience and it's not being misconstrued, or the information is not being misrepresented. And it is with that that I leave you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.